I published an article last year on Tech Archive talking about how important it is for architecture, engineering, and operations to work together when you build an enterprise digital twin. I'll spend the first 10 or so minutes talking through my perspective on the business problem and how I approach the solution. Then I want to spend about 25 minutes walking through an actual demonstration of a running enterprise digital twin to show you what it actually looks like. I want to show you the art of the possible, but also that this is not hard. You can start now with what you already have. For me, this is not about architecture. It's about solving a business problem, one that has been around for a long time. Financial services organizations constantly have to decide how to innovate faster while maintaining governance and control. This is not a new problem. It's been part of complex regulated environments for years. And it's important because holding the balance between innovation and compliance consistently over time is ultimately what builds customer trust. I've worked exclusively with this problem over the past 4.5 years, starting out at the London Stock Exchange, where I saw the challenge firsthand, how to speed up development with 10,000 developers, AI, data issues, organizational complexity. And I've come to recognize that the ability to innovate faster is directly related to the ability of an organization to make decisions faster and more consistently at all levels, strategic, operational, right down to agentic code. Very much like the racing analogy. Split-second decisions backed by real data. I started working on architectural decisions, building pre-approved governed patterns. Architecture is a great place to start because we work with structured decisions every day. But it's not just about architecture, it's about the whole flow. AI has completely collapsed the time from idea to value. I work with this reality every single day. I know. I go from idea to design to code, test, release in minutes or hours. I use 3 or 4 different AI tools depending on what I'm doing. Claude is building software factory capability into the command line. This is an entire process, shrinking rapidly. I've got 40 years experience doing this. Now I'm just directing. And I think it's vital that we start to architect the enterprise to keep up with this new way of working. When Google first started driving around with cameras on cars, we all thought they were crazy. But then they joined it all together. They put a visual interface on top, and now you can't cross London without checking your phone to see should you walk or catch the tube or get a cab. This kind of situational awareness, operationally useful information, I suppose now what we call context, is what enterprise digital twins are built for. An enterprise digital twin gives organizations a common understanding of the structure and state of the enterprise at any level of detail at any point in time. This includes the outcomes and key metrics, the governance and compliance, the people, processes, and technology at every level. This is big. I honestly don't see how you can do it without a federated approach and learning in parallel. All the data you need and the domain knowledge is already in place. One thing I would say, don't try and model the whole enterprise all at once. I tried that. I modeled the whole of Bayan and I threw it away. I looked at it and I said, what use is this? You need architects. But you need architects who connect it to the business, who understand the operational usefulness of what we are building in the digital twin. So I would say start by focusing on things that are operationally useful. First, focus on that rather than architectural correctness for its own sake. And do this exactly the same way we build code with AI. Fast, iterative loops, recursive, fractal. In fact, this is probably one of the key tenets of my approach. It's in the code I build, the data model, the deployment approach, and it's how I recommend you think together about building an enterprise digital twin. So let's have a look at the architecture. When I was trying to model a complete enterprise, this is how I ended up building it. The architecture represents the choices I made as I've worked to solve this problem. There was no how to enterprise digital twin book when I started. So I'm not saying this is the only way to do this by any means. I'm learning and adapting constantly, which means the architecture grows and adapts too. So the first thing when I look at this, I divide it into three sets: structure, meaning, and awareness, governance, and decisions. Structure is the backbone. This is about things that are and things that happen. What is the shape of the enterprise? What relates to what? What impacts what? And this covers everything from direction, outcomes, strategy, transformation, through all of people, processes, and every level of technology. I've mapped all the way down to lines of code. The structure is built dynamically from data that already exists in the organization. The information could be in LeanIX or Celonis or firewall logs. It could be in a diagram, a document, a web page. Data from all of these can be used to dynamically build and maintain the graph model. This is the spine of the enterprise digital twin. How do you decide what to model? My thinking is that if it's in the graph, then it matters to somebody. So model what matters. Start from the business problem. Then model just enough to give that problem proper context. Build it, then step back and look again and adjust the model again. After structure, we need to add meaning. And the first way to represent meaning is visually. How it looks, how you draw it, what icon you use, the relationships, the spatial layout. People forget this with enterprise digital twins. We're not modeling a pump where you can see it. We're modeling concepts and processes and lots of intangible things. Yet these things, people can see them in their heads. They identify, they associate an icon or a spreadsheet or a chart or something with what that represents. An S3 bucket, for an example, we draw an icon of it, but somebody might want to just see the cost of that thing in a list of costs, or the number of attacks in a risk assessment. So this is very different to an industrial digital twin, where the thing itself can be seen. And then when you start to move into AI, you very quickly realize that ontology and concepts are absolutely critical for defining the meaning and achieving consistent results from your enterprise digital twin. The last column is the metrics, the signals, the metrics, the decisions, the governance, that whole cycle, a whole enterprise risk management framework. All of that needs to be modeled in the enterprise digital twin. And then you have to look at this all over time as well. So you want to know the state of the enterprise at any point in time, at any level. So I think about this as cells, where each cell is a completely self-contained collection of structure, meaning, and governance driven by data from the enterprise. So it gives you some sort of overview of my approach and where I've ended up. All of this is in the product here. So what I'm going to do now is switch across to the demo. What you see now is the documentation. It's data-driven. So this is just modeling your understanding. An enterprise digital twin connects outcomes, customer value, and delivery at every level. These are fractal concepts. Every part of the organization has expected outcomes, input and output value flows, and a set of capabilities to deliver them. Value streams are the structures that show how value is created and delivered to customers. They cut across capabilities, across people, processes, and technology, across regions and governance. Usually these value streams exist in PowerPoint and Excel or extracts from separate systems. That makes it all too easy to generate a whole lot of activity with no connection to actual customer value. But having the value streams clearly identified as nodes in the enterprise digital twin makes it far easier to coordinate efforts and to measure the value of the delivery of consistent customer experience across a very rapidly changing enterprise. And then, of course, to deliver all this, you have a very large set of capabilities. I'm not going to go into too much of this now. But an enterprise digital twin brings together the revenue, cost, and risk metrics across the organization, allowing decision makers to focus on the perspective that matters to them. The connected graph makes it possible to move from a general view to a specific focus. And at this level, the decisions really are about people and numbers. And you need to be able to look at all of this over time. So if you want to have a look at costs and how it's moved over the year, you should be able to replay that easily. All of this is not new. We're doing this already. I'm not trying to reimagine business. Versions of this exist already and are used to run global enterprises, but they're manually created. What I'm saying is with an enterprise digital twin, these become part of the system. They automatically created from the meaning, the metrics, and the structure in the graph that drives all of this. And structure is what you need when you need to deliver consistently. So I'm going to go now and have a look at the structure of an enterprise. When I look at an enterprise, I divide it into direction, execution, and guidance. And all of this goes into a graph. But it has to be your meaning, your ontology, your metrics driven by your data. This is not an academic architectural exercise. This is about people that run the bank getting a common understanding of how the bank actually works. Each department, each perspective brings their view, builds their part, and the graph joins it all together, very much like what Google did with Google Maps. This model is something that I was discussing with an architect in a bank recently, and she had an enterprise architecture diagram in a PowerPoint that was typical of what you'd get with Lean IX. So I took that and I built it here in the enterprise digital twin. Strategy and transformation, outcomes drive strategy, drive projects, execution through business architecture, application and technology, guidance and awareness and decisions, policy, standards, patterns, building blocks. Each of these is a node in the graph that represents a key aspect of the business, but now it's not presented as a graph. It's presented, this is the ontology. People often ask me that. I'm saying, well, there it is. We have direction, we have execution, we have guidance, we have business capabilities. This is our ontology. Once you have this top level structure, you can then start to drill down, and I'm going to do that now, into the people, processes, and technology that drive all this. And I'm going to start with looking at governance. The key thing when you start looking at governance is it's all over the shop. It's the source materials in different places, in all sorts of different formats. This is NIST. If you go across and try and find DORA, the regulation looks like this. Getting governance docs into graphs has become a bit of a sport on LinkedIn because AI makes this very easy. When I first did this 2 years ago, I did it by hand over a weekend. I took the whole of DORA, cut and paste into a spreadsheet and a Python script into a graph. Now you've got people like Michael Hookkamer at ABN AMRO talking all the time about a new regulation that they imported into a graph, or someone with a PDF that they put in a graph. My problem with that is the tools are perfect, but when you bring in the data into a graph, it ends up looking like this, and people love zooming in and out and doing things with these graphs, but I just struggle to see the operational usefulness of this. I think you have to move beyond a graph and actually think about what are you doing with this information. So when I bring documents into an enterprise digital twin, I want them to look like this. I want them to be a set of documents that are structured, that I can read, that I can go to the original source. So I've imported, this is NIST. I've done the same for, this is DORA, the Digital Operational Resilience Act. But now, every item here, financial entity shall handle it. Oh, we all know this so well. Every item has a GUID. And a valid, it's got structured data, which means it's now ready to connect to any other data or any other regulations. Now, I'm not saying that documents are the be all and end all of development. You have to be able to put this in as part of a process. It's not just about documents, but this is a great place to start. And if you can make it easily available, then people start to use it and accelerate their processes. So you want to make this available via API, or you want to make sure you can get to it from chat. Chat and an enterprise digital twin and graphs work very well together. So for example, how many documents do we have in the governance library, and what are their titles? So when you do this, you want to make sure that the results you're getting back make sense, are consistent, and come from your data. These are not generic results pulled from the internet. This is a connected view of your information. Okay. So we get all that compliance data, controls, whatever we've got. I know there's projects like this going on in many banks already, and that's okay with graphs. Graphs are very happy with islands of information. They're not going to fall apart because of that. Now we apply the same approach for people and organizational models. So if we want to bring people data in from HR systems or Active Directory, those hierarchical relationships map perfectly. But now we want this to look like an org chart, and we want the people and processes to be able to be moved around either manually or programmatically. As the data changes, the enterprise digital twin is updating and responding dynamically at the same time, not just graphs. And then we need to add processes. These could be in Solonis, in SysML, in UML, in images. It doesn't really matter. It's the same approach. Bring it in as nodes and edges, build from data, and now make it look like a process. Swim lanes, steps, flows. These are all modeled in the graph, but made visible in the enterprise digital twin. And obviously seeing how things are connected is important in the digital twin. So we want to be able to go to that organization chart and bring it in to the same scenario and look at these together. And now if I click on a step, I can see who did that step. Or if I click on a person, I can see what they did in a process. Lots of different ways to visualize this, but the data is connected. I assume the next level down, so now we've got people, processes, and as we go down into technology, we can keep going forever. All I'm going to do is cover off some of the AWS cloud architecture type stuff, because I assume there's a lot of infrastructure as code and Terraform templating going on. Terraform provides a fantastic structured data source for cloud mapping. My approach is, as I've said, read the data in, convert it to a model, and then when you open the AWS, so everything in the model is an instance, every S3 bucket, every VPC. But what you want to do is then automatically build the layout as a diagram that is now clickable and drillable. So now what you can do is summarize. So when you're sitting with somebody, you can say, okay, that's the base structure of our app. You can see the lines are summarized. If you drill down, you get more and more detail as you go down. And if things get a little bit too detailed, you can click on a line. And so you've got this interactive approach. We spoke about documentation earlier. At the back, if you connect the templates to the guidance, you're now starting to work towards that pre-governed templates. Now what you can do is click on something and look at the documentation for it and immediately get the relevant documentation for the thing you're looking at. And the better the back-end structure, the better this whole interaction works. Last little bit. Dana asked me, where would I start? So last week in Edinburgh, and I put together this little kind of demonstration. So imagine this process is one of your 400 AI projects that's experimenting with AI. And they decide to use the software factory, the PDLC, to make one of these steps agentic, like schedule orientation. Let's do that scheduling agentically. An enterprise digital twin has to support a real-time feed of data that can automatically update the structure, the meaning, and the metrics as necessary. So that means if you decide to change that step and make it agentic to send the letters, you could automatically send a real-time stream of events from the agentic processes to the digital twin. Then what you've got is the ability to look at that over time and play back what was happening. So here you've got run starting, agentic, the steps, 4 runs, 1 run, and you can see the metrics are adding up. So now you've got not just the agentic software development, you're seeing the impact on the process. And then you could take these metrics and bubble them all the way up the value stream to what we started with at the beginning. But building this type of awareness in from the start makes it so much easier later. I've had a lot of fun in the last 9 months. I have fun every day building with AI. But I'm not building technology. I'm building whole enterprises. I'm one person, but this needs a team to work in partnership. But the software is ready. Every one of your customers, your mid-market, 10 million to 100 million customers, They're struggling with exactly the same thing. How do I go faster, deal with this AI, and not lose my company? I think providing that capability and showing customers, big enterprises, mid enterprises, what is possible could have a very real impact on the UK. Thank you very much.